So I'm Steve Steinbrenner. I'm with Crossroads Tax Advisors. Welcome back. For you that have seen this before, you know that Crossroads is a dental only accounting firm. We occasionally get involved in issues with clients around the business of dentistry that will go beyond our expertise. So we will ask dental industry experts to come on and address those hot topics in the dental industry. And so I've got somebody today I want to introduce to you. Robyn Reis. Let me tell you a little bit about Robyn here. Hi, Robyn. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself, Steve?
Good, good. Everybody, Robyn Reis is a dental coach. Specifically, she's vice president of coaching and hiring at the All-Star Dental Academy. Is that right?
Correct.
You're also owner of your own company, RJR Dental Management. As we discussed earlier, you've been in the business as long as I have, almost 25 years, forgive me. And you're also a certified human resources consultant for a company most of us know in the dental business, Bent Erickson, very well known.
Correct.
You can see my screen? I hope
Yes,
so.
I can. Thank you.
Because I've also got your email address up there. And for folks that are watching this video, understand that we will record it and certainly make you or make Robyn available to you if you have additional questions beyond this. So Robyn, let me set the tone a little bit here and tell you and the folks that are watching why I asked you to come on. And as a dental accounting firm, as I mentioned, we've spent the summer helping dentist business owners with the CARES Act and all things related to it, but specifically like spreadsheets, PPP and EIDL, and a lot of the economic relief that was made available to them. And we were working in crunching calculations and stuff like that. Well, here we are at the end of 2020 and folks are back to business, but the COVID hasn't gone away. And so it's raised a whole new set of issues and challenges in the practice around HR and how do dentist owners and leaders deal with staff and patients that may be challenged with some of this. So as a dental office practice management specialist, HR specialist, communications expert, I'm going to have you comment on this the best you can. And if you're watching this, we're going to put the questions up on the screen so you can kind of see what we're talking about. Come back and revisit it if you want to at a later date. Here's the first one. Are dentists required to pay FFCRA, Robyn, sick pay, as the pandemic continues to require quarantine of some patients and team members? And let's begin by defining FFCRA is the Family First Coronavirus Response Act put in place to really protect the public, right?
Correct.
Employees in the event that they have to go home for sick leave or have family members they have to take care of. So could you comment on this from 40,000 feet, and then we can jump in as much detail as you want?
You bet. So the FFCRA was designed to provide financial relief for those team members, employees that were affected by the virus. Now, there are very clear eligibility requirements and definitions. There are 6 qualifications for the FFCRA. And really the 2 things to remember about qualifying for this paid leave is it's directed by a healthcare provider, meaning a medical doctor, nurse practitioner, somebody, who is not your doctor employer. So the dentists themselves cannot order this. It has to come outside the office, the dental office. So it has to be given by medically directed for the person to get tested, and also quarantining being involved, meaning they have to be removed from the dental practice while they're getting tested. Now, of course, Steve, as you well know, and I'm sure everybody else that's listening understands that there are a lot of people that are asymptomatic that test positive, and then of course those that have symptoms and test positive. And the FFCRA is there to help employers pay their team members who are exposed, who have to take care of themselves, take care of a family member or a child, and even for expanded medical leave, to stay home with their children while they're being homeschooled or virtual or hybrid, etc. So the FFCRA is in two parts about paid sick leave for somebody who's diagnosed, been exposed potentially, and then also for Expanded Family Medical Leave Act that traditionally is not available to under 50 employers or 50 employees employers, to also offset some financial hardship for those parents that have to take care of their children. So ideally, what's going to happen is the employee who potentially was exposed, has some symptoms, is going to come to the employer, let them know. They're going to request FFCRA paid leave, and depending on what qualifying reason they fall under, they're either going to get their regular pay up to 80 hours, which is essentially 2 weeks. And that means that if you typically work a 32-hour work week, you don't get 40 hours for that week. It's 32 and 32. It's up to 80 hours while you're getting your diagnosis and have to stay home and isolate. So ideally, you want your employee to request that leave, figure it out, wait until you get the test results. They do have to be out of the workplace while that's occurring. And then, take the steps that are necessary depending on the results. Now, the results could be positive or negative. And if they're negative for COVID, then you just follow your normal sick leave policy. But if they are positive, then there are certain, again, guidelines by the CDC and OSHA that you have to follow.
And Robyn, you mentioned earlier there's an expiration date attached to FFCRA. Is that right?
Yes. So this policy was enacted April 1st and expires December 31st. So up until December 31st, the FFCRA does apply. Now, whether you have 1 or 5 or 50 employees, you still are obligated under the FFCRA to pay the person if they qualify for those 6 reasons. Now, you and I, Steve, talked about, who qualifies, who doesn't. Do they get the full pay? Do they get partial pay? And there's also the exemption that people have heard about. The Department of Labor is very, very clear. They came out in mid-September with a revised definition of what a healthcare provider is. So and also a small business exemption. So again, not to go into a rabbit hole with the definition, but the idea again that you could potentially, if it's going to create a financial hardship on the practice, exempt your clinical team members who are, as defined by the Department of Labor, considered a healthcare provider. However, your administrative team members are not exempt under that definition. So it creates some, concern for us from an HR standpoint on the fairness of how that's going to happen. So our advice is to, no matter how many employees you have, be fair across the board, make it available to everybody. And also know that, as Steve, your expertise is in accounting, they can get those wages that they pay for FFCRA, either paid sick leave or expanded FMLA, back into payroll tax credits. So really, it's not going to hurt the employer because they have to pay those wages up front, but then they will get it back in payroll tax credits.
And Robyn, as a baseline, we also agree there's good information on the Department of Labor website. I mean, you can literally go there and see FFCRA in detail, because every occasion, every circumstance has a different solution attached to it. So it's important that they understand it's not a catch-all.
Absolutely. And there was at one time in August, the Department of Labor finally came out and said, yes, dentists are under the healthcare definition, and therefore you can have a blanket exemption for your dental practice. Mm-hmm. Well, a federal New York judge challenged that. And so the Department of Labor had to respond, and then they qualified it and really defined it as to who is a healthcare provider. So now a blanket exemption is no longer available.
Robyn, what do you do? And this is almost like set the scene. Doctor's in his office, staff member comes in and does not feel well and thinks it's COVID related. There's some communication expertise in here, I'm sure. about how to handle that with an employee. There's also probably very technical protocol you have to go through. Walk me through this scene.
Sure. Well, if there's anything your viewers and listeners will take from today, and that is make sure you have a plan. Make sure before it happens to your practice, make sure you have a plan in place so that your team members know what to do and what the steps are necessary. So if an employee comes and they think they might be sick, they think they might have been exposed, the best thing that the employer can do is have them go seek out a diagnosis from their, medical provider, their normal family physician, go to CVS, Walgreens, all, Minute Clinic, whatever's available. But again, keep in mind, we're also in the middle of flu season, right? So not every sniffle and cough is going to be COVID. I understand everybody has heightened awareness. So that, any fever, any cough, anything that could be related, you want to be protective of your coworkers. And so you do want to get it checked out. So by doing so, if it is COVID related, this goes back to the FFCRA for being eligible for paid leave. If it's COVID related, you suspect that it is, then while the employee is going to get tested, the time that they're out of the office is covered under FFCRA until they get those results. Again, if it's negative, then FFCRA stops. It no longer qualifies for the paid leave. So then your normal vacation, PTO, sick leave would apply that you currently have in your practice. Again, if they test positive, then of course, FFCRA applies up through 2 weeks, up to 80 hours. While they're recuperating, isolating, and quarantining. And then, depending on their resolution of symptoms, they have to be fever-free, they have to be out of the office, 10 days from the onset of symptoms. All of that good stuff has to be followed. And again, there are specific guidelines from the CDC about that. And also your state Department of Health will tell you. I get panicked calls saying, oh my gosh, we've had our first case. An employee came in and said their husband or, significant other tested positive. They think they might, what should they do? And again, your first line of defense is to call your state Department of Health, because they will tell you as far as contact tracing and all of that good stuff that, what's the first thing. But I mean, logically and from a healthcare standpoint, make sure that the employee gets tested.
And Robyn, we just had conversations with a client that shared an experience where she had staff members with two very different opinions of this in this climate. One staff member was extremely nervous and cautious and precautious about COVID. Another was not. It seemed to be a reflection of our society, right? And so I think it's important to remember that the dentist not get caught up in a culture of the office that's one way or the other. And like you said, really create a plan that will help everybody regardless of their degree of concern there. But that reminds me, and is a good segue into the next question, is, what do we do in an office where there's the anxiety that's growing, staff members have different opinions about it, the dentist has been challenged already with HR issues, and it's impacting morale. So with a practice management hat on, are there some recommendations you can make right now for dentists as we get into the end of the year where we would normally see these big holiday parties and celebrations? What do we do to address morale or concern about that?
Steve, you bring up a good point. And I guess the adage, you can't please everybody all the time, will go into play. And you're right, you can't get caught up into people's opinions and personal feelings. And, the reality is we have lives outside the practice. And, I might be taking care of an elderly relative, or I might have the opportunity to expose other people that maybe are at higher risk. So I think honoring and acknowledging and respecting each person's position, of course, is a good business practice to do. At the same time, the doctor does have to be the leader, and he or she has to be very, very clear about having a plan in place as to what are the necessary steps from both institution guidance, the CDC, the State Department of Health, maybe even your local dental society, they might have some resources so that the team understands and knows and can really feel the fact that the employer is taking care of them. So my suggestion would be to always be transparent and let them know that, above all else, we want to keep you safe. And sometimes it's out of an abundance of caution that we're going to ask, team members who are feeling sick to stay home. And, to let them know that we are here for them. I've heard some great ideas. Like you said, everybody's been affected. Not one person on the planet has not been affected by this situation. And so making the most of it without detracting from the seriousness of it. There are great ways that some practices are handling it. Kind of like you've heard of the swear jar. Some team members are trying to just create some whimsy in the office, and anytime a patient or a team member says corona or COVID, they put a quarter in a drawer, and they make something positive out of a serious situation. Then they get to spend it, whether it's bringing in lunch or sending home goodie bags with one another, which leads me to another team idea where they are creating little goodie bags for each other, kind of like a secret Santa, and they're sticking it in the office in some like treasure hunt ways so that people can find little gifts throughout the day. Again, just to bring some levity to the practice. And I know some doctors, now that the holidays are upon us, they're sending dinners home and having groceries delivered for their team members because they know it's very, very stressful. And a lot of people won't be able to be with family members this year. So they're trying to bring some kind of, normalcy to this very interesting time.
That's all good. Robyn, you've been good addressing a number of things for us. One is very technical questions we get around FFCRA. Thank you. On the screen, dentists can see how to contact you directly, either through the All-Star Dental Academy at Robyn at allstardentalacademy.com. They can also contact us, obviously, and we can forward those questions on to you. But you also touched on some things people don't talk about that aren't technical, and that's the human element of it and the communications around it. Some of the empathy that we need to be sharing with our staffs and patients as well. So thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll be back in touch again to request more of your expertise.
Steve, thanks so much for having me. And again, it was a balcony view. I know there were a lot of details that we didn't get into, but again, I would just refer them back to you to get that expertise advice.
It's all good. Thank you, Robyn.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.